It's Ash from Super Videos, back at you for another Q&A video. This is going to be Q&A number 29. As always, if you're not caught up with the Walking Dead's TV show and comic book, but for this Q&A, it's just the TV show. You may not want to watch this video because it may spoil some things for you. So this Q&A video is going to be a shorter one. We don't have a lot of questions for this week, but let's get right into this. So let's start with these questions. They're all from the Walking Dead's TV show. The first one comes from WYSIWYG43, and they ask, I just stumbled on your channel and I would like to know if the TV show would try to bring Abraham back for some absurd reason. So first, welcome to the channel. I'm not sure if you're a subscriber or not, but welcome to the channel. So for your question, I don't think there's any reason for them to bring Abraham back unless it's like a flashback episode or they're just showing some sort of flashback scene. That's the only reason I can see them bringing Abraham back. I don't see them bringing him back permanently. So it's probably going to be for a flashback scene, maybe a few minutes, maybe a couple seconds even. And for him to come back in a flashback even, they would need to be killing off someone close to him to have that flashback scene. So if they kill off Rosita, if they kill off Sasha or someone like that, they can bring Abraham back as a flashback scene, but other than that, there's really no reason for them to do that. Now, in terms of Sasha and Rosita, I think it's more likely that Sasha is gonna die by the end of this season. There's been a lot of rumors, mainly because she's been cast in the new Star Trek TV show as the main lead. There were rumors of her dying, and that could link to us seeing Abraham as a flashback. So that's a good question. The next question comes from TheBlackAntiHero. He asks, how do you think Abraham would react to Shane if Shane didn't die? That's a good question. I think it depends. There is two versions of Abraham. There's an Abraham at the phase where he was basically trying to get Eugene to Washington, and there's the Abraham after, when he found out that there's no cure. These are the two types of Abrahams we know, or we knew. So if it's the first case, I think if Shane was gonna help Abraham get Eugene to Washington, then Abraham would have no problem with Shane, regardless of Shane's relationship with Rick. But if it's the Abraham after he found out there's no cure, and the Abraham that is loyal to Rick and follows Rick and looks at Rick as his leader, then I think you would have some problems between Shane and Abraham. Now that depends also, because if Shane was cool with Rick at that time and there was a good relationship between them, then there would probably be a good relationship between Abraham and Shane as well. But if there was some sort of bad relationship between these two, Rick and Shane, then I don't think Abraham would like Shane that much. He would probably still be loyal to Rick and try to even maybe force or push Shane into acting right and following Rick's orders. But that's a good question. The next question comes from Steven Moraga. He asks, when there was an army helicopter in season 3, where do you think they came from and how many survivors do you think they had? So that was still pretty much early on in the apocalypse, and because of that, I feel like they probably had some more survivors. Now, by this time, I think whatever community they were from, they have probably been exterminated completely and they don't exist anymore. But just to go back to your question, I think because it was an army helicopter, it was probably some sort of military camp or something like that for survivors, and it wasn't like civilians had an army helicopter or anything like that. I think it was strictly a military compound or a camp. They did accept survivors probably, but not too much, and it was probably overrun by walkers at some point and basically destroyed. So in terms of how many numbers they probably had a good number of people. Most of them, like I said, probably personnel, military personnel, or doctors or things like that, but there was probably some survivors in there as well. Now, to come up with a number, that's going to be difficult, but I would say there was a good number of people in that camp, whatever the camp was. The next question comes from Final Mystery T. He actually has 2 questions. The first one, after all the encounters Rick has had with enemies such as the governor, the cannibals, plus others, it has made him more ruthless. What effect do you think Negan will have on Rick in the aftermath? That's a great question. I actually love this question. I think Negan's effect on Rick is going to kind of be in a good way. So like you said, the governor, the cannibals, and everyone else has made Rick ruthless and everything. But I think Negan, he is so ruthless himself that he's gonna make Rick question himself and question his own actions. And he's going to realize that to live in this world, you need some humanity in you. And you don't need to be as ruthless as you are. You don't need to be ruthless. You don't need to kill everyone. So I think Negan is gonna pull Rick back a little bit and bring him back to his humanity. That doesn't mean that he's gonna accept Negan and forgive him or anything like that, but he's not going to just kill Negan when he has the chance. At the moment right now, in the story, in the TV show, he is. But I think once the conflict starts, once the war starts, he's going to come to his senses and realize that to live in this world, you need to have some sort of humanity left in you, and you need to leave the room for whoever is ruthless themselves is going to pay. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they have to die, but they have to pay for what they do. But at the same time, you don't need to be ruthless to them. You don't need to murder them in a brutal way. You don't need to murder them. You don't need to do things like that. You may, but you don't always have to do that. I think Negan is gonna have a more positive influence and effect on Rick coming up. And he is not gonna have the same effect as the governor. For the governor and the cannibals, they made Rick ruthless. They made him become a very strict person. So if you see a stranger, don't trust them. So if you see them try to kill you, kill them back, regardless of whether they were just trying to survive or if they actually pose a threat or not. But I think coming up with Negan, I think Rick is going to be pulled back a little bit in his humanity. But that's a great question. The next question is, what is next for Morgan? I feel his character has gone stale. Is there really a push for his character again? I completely agree with you. His character has gone a bit stale. At the beginning with the all life is precious, whatever, it was good. I think it was a good change of story. It was a good remix of the story, and it gave us a Morgan that we didn't see previously, and I like that. But that's been dragging a little bit too much now, and I feel like they do definitely need to move his character to a new direction, whether he's gonna go back to his old self or he's gonna become a new Morgan where he's not gonna be killing everyone, but at the same time he's not like all life is precious, so it's like somewhere in between. That's the Morgan I'm most interested to see. So I hope they move his character that way. Now in terms of what's going to push him towards that, I think a lot of that is going to be learning about what Negan and the other saviors have done to our survivors and seeing this conflict begin and seeing the war and being at the forefront of the war. That's gonna push him towards this new direction. That's a good question though. The next question comes from Gavin Cottrell. He asks, do you think Carol will die in 7B? I think it's likely that she's gonna die. I don't want her to die. I think there's still some story left for Carol. I think there's still a lot of things they can do with Carol's character, so I don't want her to die, but I could definitely see them killing her off in the second half of season 7. Now, in terms of how likely it is, I would say around 40%. There's a 40% chance that they're gonna kill Carol off in the second half of the season. But like I said, I would want to see Carol live and would like to see a new version of Carol. Like I said with Morgan, the same applies for Carol as well. I want to see a change in Carol. I want to see her story be pushed in a new direction. The last question comes from Dynasty Warrior Z. They ask, do you think Rick will ever be as badass as he was in season 5 when he killed Gareth? That's a great question. I think maybe not as ruthless, but he's gonna be pretty close in this war coming up. And we're gonna see a side of Rick that is very ruthless in this war. But like I answered previously with the previous question, I think after the war is done or near the end of the war, we're gonna see Rick be pulled back a little bit, and we're gonna see him kind of realize that he doesn't have to be all that ruthless. But in terms of if he's ever gonna be that ruthless, no, never. He's never gonna be as ruthless as he was. But he's gonna come pretty close in this war, or in the middle of the war, or in the early stages of the war. But by the end of the war, and at the end of the war, I think he's gonna be pulled back a little bit again. But that's a good question. That's it for this Q&A video. Thanks for participating. If you want to participate in my next Q&A video, please leave your questions in the comment section below. Make sure to put Q&A before your comment so I can find it. That's it for this Q&A video. Thanks for watching. I'll be back for another video.